Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Booklights. This is the final show before Halloween. So exciting. And we have been spotlighting so much great spooky content this month. It has been fantastic. So I'm so excited that you're here. Today, we are going to be chatting with Mark Leslie. If you have never read him before, you are in for such a treat. And a lot of his work is shorter so that you can get it in bite-sized nuggets as you're racing between all of your spooky fun. So if you haven't read him yet, I'll read his bio here so you can get to know him. Mark Leslie would be the first to admit that he's still afraid of the monster under his bed. That may be why most of his books explore the darker side. In addition to penning series of true ghost tales that include Spooky Sudbury, Haunted Hospitals, and Creepy Capital, he has also written a few horror titles, I, Death, One Hand Screaming, and Nocturnal Screams. He's also the editor of horror anthologies Campus Chills, Feel the Fear, and Supernatural. He's also the author of the humorous urban fantasy action and adventure Canadian Werewolf series, which I noticed when I was getting ready for the interview that one of the books is free right now for Halloween, so go grab it. His other passions within the nonfiction realm include fan appreciation trivia books. I saw that there's one for Christmas Vacation coming soon, so we'll have to ask him about that. And proudly adopting the term book nerd for himself, Mark is most comfortable with a pen in his hand, fingers on the keyboard, or with his nose stuck in a book. He can often be seen traveling to book events with life-size skeleton named Barnaby Jones. Born in Sudbury, Ontario, Mark has courted with a serious addiction to reading and writing his entire life, and he currently lives in Waterloo, Ontario. So, with no further delay, are you there, Mark?
Oh, hey, Lisa. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And you are our final guest, spooky guest before Halloween. And you have a 20th anniversary edition of One Hand Screaming. You want to tell everybody why they should run grab it?
Well, yeah, this is kind of an exciting landmark for me, or a milestone. So 20 years ago, I'd had all these horror stories published in small press magazines. And I was working in the book industry, and people would come around and say, "So you're a writer?" And I'd say, "Yeah." And then they'd look around the bookstore and go, "Well, where can I find your stuff?" But my stuff was in small press magazines, and they were only on the shelf for maybe a month or a quarter or something like that, and then they were gone. So what I did is 20 years ago, I collected the best of my published horror fiction. I also included a few original tales, and I created a book about 150 pages. And it had some stories of mine called One Hand Screaming, and I made it available as a print-on-demand title. And it was pretty exciting. I've since published 35 other books, but 20 years ago, it was my first book, and it was a major landmark for me, something to be really proud of. And I thought, wow, I'm coming up on the 20th anniversary. What should I do? Let's do something special. Well, I've been writing for 40 years. I got my first rejection at the age of 15. And so
wow.
I thought, it could have been called 40 haunting years, but I wanted to celebrate that 20th anniversary. So what I did is I went back to the previous 20 years and I looked at horror stories that had published, as well as stuff I've written that hasn't been published yet. And it's more than twice the size. It's almost 400 pages. I commissioned some original artwork for it. So each section of the book with different themes has original macabre art. And I also have notes behind the stories, and the stories are more like Twilight Zone meets Black Mirror. So it's sort of that eerie stuff, not slash and hack horror, although there is the occasional jump scare and things like that in the stories. And what I also did, which I thought would be really fun, because I'm a big beer nerd as well as a book nerd, is I collaborated with a local brewery, Counterpoint Brewing, in Kitchener, Ontario, near where I live, and they did a beer called One Hop Screaming. And similarly,
fun.
yeah, and that was exciting because it's a bitter, hoppy beer, and my cover designer created the logo for it, and it says "You'll scream for more," and and it comes with, so the can of the beer comes with a little barcode, like a QR code, as well as the coasters has a QR code, so you can download a story that's called As One Hop Screams, and
Wow.
it's a haunted beer story that's free, and of course I can provide the link so you can share that, so people can just enjoy the beer and read the haunted beer story. And again, I used it with Easter eggs, right? And so I included the brewer in it. I included the names of bar managers and servers and bartenders and beer buddies who I've had beers with over the years, just as Easter eggs. But I thought I got to do this big because this was a pretty
Yeah.
landmark moment for me.
That is a milestone because I too am a writer, and I have had so many writing friends over the years who many of them don't write anymore. And it's
Uh,
funny because when I was a reader, it never occurred to me that once you became a published author, you were a published author forever. It never
yeah.
occurred to me that people might stop someday. And so, as I crossed over my 10-year anniversary, I started looking around going, gosh, there aren't a lot, so I think that sometimes people don't realize that you have stories to tell, but at some point, lots of people that chapter is closed, so to
Yeah.
speak, and they move on to something else. So it is a huge milestone, that 20 years. And I think the idea of merging a beer story and a beer and barcodes, that leads right into my next question, because you are kind of, besides writing your own spooky fiction, you
Mhm.
write a lot of nonfiction books to help writers find readers.
Yes.
And that seems to be like a specialty. You want to talk to people about, your passion
Yeah.
for doing that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the one thing I knew I wanted to do is I wanted to be a writer since the age of 15, right? And so when I was looking at what to do, is like, what job can I get? So out of university with my English degree, I got a job in a bookstore, and so 1992 is when my first story was in print, and I started working in the book industry. But I've worked in the book industry for 35 years, bookseller and various different roles over the years. And because I'm passionate about wanting to learn for myself, I realized I also acquired a whole bunch of insights and knowledge of the industry that I knew could help other writers. For example, I mean, one of my books is an author's guide to working with libraries and bookstores. Because I've managed bookstores and done a lot of this stuff myself, I thought it's really important for authors to understand how do they collaborate with a business like a bookstore, because it's not just, yay, carry my book because I'm me and I'm nice. No, carry my
Right.
book because the book's going to sell and make you money, because you have to make money to earn a living and pay the rent. And so helping authors understand the business aspects of writing is so important to me, because yes, we're passionate about the stories we tell. And also the other thing is, authors are so terrified of marketing. They think marketing is a scary thing. And I try to remind them, marketing is really just a different kind of storytelling if you do it
It's
properly.
true. Yeah,
Right.
that's true. And also there's that feeling of, we write a story to be read, and if you're not willing to tell people it exists,
Yeah.
how is it ever going to get read, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I think the other thing too, I mean, as a bookseller, one of the reasons I gravitated towards, selling books instead of shoes or other things that you could sell was, I believe in books. I believe in story. It's magical to be able to put the right book in the right customer's hands, or the right reader's hands. And as an author as well, I'm not the kind of author who's interested in selling. I'm more interested in creating a relationship with the reader. So, for example, I've been at a lot of book events this month, and when people come up and they see my skeleton beside me, they know either to run in the opposite direction away from the crazy bald guy with the skeleton, or they see the skeleton, go, "Hey, that's my cup of tea." But when they
Right.
come up, I say, "Well, what do you like to read?" Was, I like to read romance. I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe you should check out my friend Julie Strauss. She's a great romance writer. Instead of trying to sell them a book that may not be good for them. Because that's the
Right.
other thing that's important, right? Is making sure it's in front of the right people. And I guess that's why, using the skeleton, like I'm wearing a skull shirt right now, so people can kind of know what they're going to get, is also just part of the marketing, or part of the branding.
Yeah, when I write paranormal romances that tend to be, people die. So
Yeah.
I have like bloody candelabras and things that I bring, and my little skull placemat to book
Yeah.
signings. So people know as they walk up what type of story they're going to be getting.
Yeah, yeah, and obviously, and you're mixing the two, right? You're mixing, and that's
Hmm.
such a hot genre right now too. So
Hmm.
that's exciting because you're like, yes, I do that.
Yeah,
Yes, I do
uh-huh.
that. I mix the paranormal with romance.
That's right. You want a little danger with that romance. We got it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, I was going to ask you the difference. So the one hand screaming is a lot of short fiction stories, but
Right.
have you written novels? How do you feel about the difference between, short fiction versus novelization?
It's kind of funny. Well, when I started on a typewriter before the internet, mailing manuscripts away, the going wisdom for writers was sell a bunch of short stories, work your way up through the markets from semi-pro to pro, etc., and then
Right.
you'll be able to get the attention of an editor or an agent. And then obviously the industry shifted and changed in that way. And so I did a lot of short fiction early on, and I haven't done a lot of short fiction lately because it doesn't pay enough, right? I mean, five
Exactly.
cents or 8 cents US a word for, that's $300 for a story. And so
Right.
I've done a lot more books, right? I've written full-length books that are true ghost story books, but also I have 7 books in my Canadian Werewolf series. I penned I Death, that was traditionally published. My Canadian Werewolf series, I Do. And it's been a long time since I've gone back to short fiction. Like every once in a while, I'll get a request from an editor. Oh, can you write something for this? And so
Right.
I've done these stories over the years, but it's more for fun. And it was so interesting to go from focusing on novels to spend a little bit of time digging into my archives and going, oh, I miss and maybe and I wrote a few new pieces specifically for this book. And I thought, I miss this. I miss the palate cleanser of writing a short story really relatively quickly, right? Because
Right.
2,000 words, 4,000 words, whatever it is, that's a chapter. Basically, chapter of a book.
Exactly.
And often when I'm in the throes of a book, I may write 1 or 2 chapters a day. So writing a short story doesn't take that long. So you write it, you put it aside. I usually have to put it aside for a week or so, give it another pass, then get it to an editor to have them tell me what's wrong and fix things and clean it up. But it's such a different experience. I mean, you also have to be really concise, right? You
Yes.
don't have
Every
time to
word counts. No wasted words.
I know, and even doing some of the like poetry, which is in the book, or even the short pieces, the microfiction. It's like 1,000 words or under. You have to cut and kill and slice.
Yes, yes. I used to teach a class on flash fiction, and we would do murder in 250 words or less.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
yeah, and it was so much fun. But it's a master class in finding words that have dual meanings and finding that can
Yeah,
do the work and making your verbs your adjectives and
right.
because every word does count. And so for me, like you, I started with short fiction. I got published horror short stories first and then eventually wrote novels. And I still write short stories every month for my Patreon, which I love
Oh, that's
doing
fantastic.
because it keeps there is a rush that comes. And I think it's the same when you read them too. There's a rush that comes from a short story because the payoff feels good. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you do it right, the payoff feels real good. And so
Hmm.
it's addictive to read and to write. And I think that because the market changed so much and now there's KU and it matters about page reads, short fiction doesn't get as much love as it should because it's not about the quantity. It's that feel for, that twist at the end where you go,
Yeah.
oh, that was good, and
Yeah.
so I love that you are still, putting that out there because I think that in our short attention span world, I think short stories are going to make a comeback.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I like about it is, unlike a novel, I mean, if you're not enjoying the characters or whatever, well, you're stuck. Here's 300 pages. It's these characters. These are the 2 big plot lines and whatever. With a short story, it's like if you don't like it, you have a collection. There's like 26 stories here or whatever,
Yeah.
or 44 actually in total now, stories and poems. If you don't like it, you skip to the next one. You go, oh, that one's not my cup of tea. Oh, this one is. And
Yay. Yeah.
that's the nice thing, either about an anthology with different authors, of course, or a short story collection like this one is. Yeah, if you're not liking it, just skip. You're not losing the whole book. You're just losing one of the stories because it's not your thing.
Right. Right. Oh, I
Like a box of
totally agree.
chocolates, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I wanted to ask you too, how many of your books have come from short stories? Because I have like
Yeah.
whole book series that came out of a short story. Have you
Yeah.
inspired your longer works?
Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I Death was originally a 1,000-word story I originally wrote when I was in high school for an
Wow.
exercise for an English class. That became I wrote a sequel story to it when I was in university, and that became a novel. It ended up being adapted into actually a blog first, and then a novel. And then the Canadian Werewolf series, which is 7 books now, book eight's coming out in 2025. That was a initially a 10,000 word story I wrote. It was way too long. It needed to be cut down to 6,000 words for the market I sent it to. And it was the monster within or something was the theme. And I was like, oh, I want to look at this. What it'd be like to be a guy living in New York who turns into a wolf every full moon and has no control and wakes up naked in Battery Park and the ones that has to find clothes to get home. I wanted to look at the humorous side of like the realistic side. Like you don't just
Right,
wake up
right,
with clothes, like they're somewhere and you don't know where you left them.
right,
Um,
right.
and that I thought was just going to be a standalone story about a morning in the life of this poor sucker. And then I had people who read it who said, "Well, what happens next?" I go, "Nothing. It's over. He got to his doctor's appointment. He's good." And it's like, "No, but what happens the rest of his day?" So then they finally convinced me to write the novel. And then I thought it was a standalone novel. And then I had an editor ask for a story about monsters on a train. And I said, well, no, maybe I'll return to Michael and say, well, what if he has to go from Manhattan to Stowe, Vermont on a train?
Yeah.
And it's going to be sundown on the night of a full moon before he gets there. So he's going to turn into a wolf before he gets there. So monsters on a train kind of thing. And people have equated it to Logan, the
Hmm.
Wolverine movie. Logan meets planes, trains, and automobiles because it's got some humor, and he's trying to protect a young girl as they travel cross country on this train, and and that was so much fun. I thought I should really return and see what other antics Michael can get into, and I
Yes.
brought
What
him
kind
to
of
Los
werewolf
Angeles,
shenanigans?
and what's that?
What kind of werewolf shenanigans can he have?
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, so much fun. I mean, the latest one was Only Monsters in the Building, where I had him seeking therapy for paranormals in upstate New York with other monsters, like a vegan vampire who's having trouble, obviously, coming to terms with what he has to do, an extroverted troll who invites people under his bridge instead of scaring them away or eating them,
Ah,
stuff like that. It's
fun.
like the people, like, he's a misfit, right? He's an alpha wolf and a beta male. So I was like, he just doesn't fit in with the other monsters. So, where he's got to go seek some therapy finally to deal with his issues. And I thought that'd be a fun murder mystery.
Ah, yeah. And which one is the one that I saw that was free right now?
So that is actually this time around is the original story that
Okay.
got adapted. So it's kind of like a taste, and it's free in audio as well. I mean, on YouTube at least. And so people can check it out and say, well, if they like it, then hey, you can now see the book that this was adapted into because that's just his morning as opposed to his full day. And it's been abridged obviously from the book. But and if they don't like it, then well, they've only wasted 45 minutes instead of 8 hours.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. And I wanted to ask you too about the this kind of, I guess this would be like maybe on the nonfiction side. I don't know, but
Yeah.
you've written nonfiction about writing books, and then you
Yeah.
have your horror fiction, but then there's these trivia books, and I
Yes.
saw Christmas Vacation is coming
It's
out.
coming up, yeah, in December of this year, for the 35th anniversary of the film's release.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Okay.
because
Now I feel old.
it's based on a short story John Hughes wrote for National Lampoon, the magazine,
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
there's all kinds of great trivia related to the film and putting it together and stuff like that. So, I got that happened. That started on the 35th anniversary of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. One of my favorite movies is I saw there's a book Del Griffith, John Candy's character's reading called The Canadian Mounted, which is humorous. He's meant to be reading a porn novel. And as a Canadian actor, haha, it's a funny joke. And then Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, who is a huge fan of John Candy, has a copy of The Canadian Mounted that he appears in a couple of the Deadpool movies. Very subtle. But I noticed it because I
I
pay
love
attention to
that.
books. And I went, what the heck is this? Is this one of those weird prop books? Is this like something like the number 555 used in Hollywood and television for an exchange for whatever? And then I realized it was a real book, and it's been out of print.
Wow.
It was a pornographic novel, But I got a hold of the original artwork because it was out of print. It was never in copyright. The publisher actually went bankrupt. That was the last book they published. And I did a trivia book about the movie using the cover. So anyone who sees it,
Wow.
who's a big enough fan, knows it. And I thought maybe 35 people would read it, but apparently thousands of people recognized the cover and want it. Then I did one called Yippee Ki-Yay, you know, the rest of the I did that one on Die Hard on the 35th anniversary of another 80s film I love. And people love that. And there's an author photo of me dressed up like Bruce McLean with a white t-shirt with blood splattering a
Oh,
fake
nice, nice.
which I kind of had fun with that because there's a picture of me reading the book like at LaGuardia Airport, looking like John Candy. And so with Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I have my cousin Eddie costume already, and it's going to be called "Merry Christmas." The crapper was full. Again, if you know the line, you're probably a
Right.
fan of the movie. If you don't know the
Yes.
line, it's not your cup of tea.
Exactly, exactly. Well, when you put together these books, how much research goes into it? I mean,
Oh,
obviously you've seen the movie a whole bunch, but how much
yeah,
research? Because like that trip, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I didn't even ever
yeah.
notice that, and I've seen that movie a lot. So,
Oh,
what kind of research went into Christmas
well, I
Vacation?
mean, I got my hands on an original script, the shooting script. So some of the
Wow.
trivia is these are cut scenes. So there's a whole subplot in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles where Neil's wife thinks he's cheating on her, and there's elements of it in the movie that were left there. So getting a hold of the script, reading interviews with the different actors over the years, buying books, watching all the DVD special features, and then even watching the movie repeatedly because it's like, okay, there's a usually bloopers and stuff like that were in the movie or little subtle things that are of note. And I'm sitting there with a notebook, like rewinding, rewinding the video, rewind the video, stop, watch that again, and go, yeah, you're right. There's a blooper there, and you pick up on it. Or even just looking for subtle Easter eggs and stuff like that, like Kevin Bacon in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and the reason he was there is because John Hughes he'd just finished shooting another movie with John Hughes, and he was still in New York, so they thought, oh well, we'll throw him in as an actor. So stuff like that. I love, and I guess I'm only going to do it for books I really love and will watch hundreds of times
Right,
because if I'm as passionate about that movie and I'm willing to watch it over and over, like these are movies I watch every single year, at least once or twice, if not three times. So
right.
why not put all of that on wasted time to good use? Like a
Well,
comfort food time, comfort watching time to good use.
well, since it's trick or treat season, can you give us just a tiny surprise that we didn't know about Christmas Vacation that we'll find in the book that comes out?
I think I was trying so hard to get the rights to the short story that John Hughes wrote called like Christmas 1952. That's one of the ones. I think there's a few interesting elements in the movie, like the daughter. You probably know this, but the daughter of, oh my God, is it Francis Ford Coppola is the
Hmm.
woman in the lingerie department.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that. What?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the subtle trivia
She's
trivia bits.
Mary.
Yeah, Mary. Yeah, Mary. Hey, that's my name. I'm Mary.
That's my name.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So stuff like that. There's just so many little tidbits and bits and pieces that are kind of humorous. Yeah, just elements to. I mean, you think about Leonard from Big Bang Theory was his son in that film. And
Oh,
I
fun.
remember discovering that, like, and again, it's clear when you look at it, but I remember watching it going, wait a second, that's Leonard as a young man.
Oh my gosh. Well, before we run out of time, because we could talk all day,
Yeah.
um, for Halloween season, what is your go-to horror movie that we should all watch?
You know what? I know it sounds weird, but I'm a huge fan of the Terminator. It's science fiction horror,
Oh, hmm.
but it is such because it's the relentless, unending thing that will not stop until it gets to its target, right? And that to me is one of the most horrifying things ever because I think it still holds up to this day,
Mhm.
particularly as we're in this age of,
With the
okay,
AI.
Skynet, yeah, deciding, yeah, you know what, humans, you're too stupid to have this planet. We need to get rid of you. And sometimes I'm getting close to believing them.
Right, right. Sometimes I'm like, maybe Skynet was right.
Yeah, we're no, we're too bad for our own good.
Right, right. Well, how can readers, when they get excited, they buy One Hand Screaming and they read all these stories? How can they get in touch with you? Are you on social media, or
Yeah.
how do they?
I'm all over social media. And if you go to markleslie.ca, you can find links to me on Instagram, on Twitter/X, on Facebook, on all the places. I'm out there and attending to people and trying my best to respond wherever people reach out to me.
That's great. And we do have a link to his website right there in the show notes. So you can click right there and get connected. And thanks so much for being here, Mark. It was great chatting with you.
Thanks, Lisa. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.